Do the trashy pulp novels of the world have anything to offer? Are bestsellers all they're cracked up to be? Here at Terrible Book Club, we explore whether you really can judge a book by its cover, or its ridiculous synopsis. You ever passed a book and thought, ugh, who's reading this? We probably are.
And welcome to episode 191 of the Terrible Book Club. I'm Paris, and this is Chris.
Hello.
And this is Dee and Ken from the Antiques Freaks.
Hello. Howdy.
This book rotates upon an axis of antique spoons, and we felt we needed some support for this episode from our fellow Antiques Freaks, so they're here with us today to get us all through this one.
That's crazy. That's also the axis I rotate on.
Also, I'm recovering from a sickness, so I felt like I needed the backup here because my brain probably isn't functioning as highly as it normally is, which is not at all also. So, it's really low grade today. So thank you for backing me up here, Antiques Freaks.
Yeah, we had like half a Chris and then a bunch of weird spoon stuff. So we were like, we need our podcast spouses today. We need Dee and Ken here to get us through it.
We can't carry the book, Chris, but we can carry you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And thank you both for doing this on such short notice. We did call our banners in pretty late for this one, so we appreciate you both being here with us today.
Thank you for having us on.
Oh yeah, of course. This time, dear listeners, we read VenCo by Cherie Dimaline at the request of our patron Robin. Robin, thank you so much for your steadfast support. We hope you enjoy this episode, but you know what you did. You know what you did by recommending this. You know what you were doing. If this is your first time listening to the show, what we do here at the Terrible Book Club is we read books that we assume will be bad based on their cover, title, summary, or some combination of the three. Sometimes we read books that our patrons, listeners, or friends recommend, like we're doing today. So we typically do the opposite of what most people do when they are in a bookstore or while they're browsing the internet. Usually this experiment results in a hilarious and disappointing read, but once in a while we do actually end up liking the book. Today's show includes our usual barnyard language plus magic and witch stuff in the vein of like woo-woo wine club. That's like the vibe we have today. There's also plenty of sexual themes, and then we're going to be talking about, patriarchy and colonialism and misogyny and that whole bag, that horrible oppression we all live under each day. That's mixed in here pretty heavily too.
That's okay. This book's got the problem solved, Paris.
Oh, yeah, we got it.
All.
We got the spoons, man. We're ready. We're ready with our spoons. All
okay.
Right.
Yeah, we'll get to that soon, but how about I read the back of the book summary and the characters here, and then we'll have a special guest reading of the summary of the book that we wrote by Dee.
All right, so Chris is going to tell us what's on the back of the book, what the book promises, how is it luring us in to read it.
Metty millennial Lucky St. James is barely hanging on when she learns she'll be evicted from the tiny Toronto apartment she shares with her cantankerous but loving grandmother Stella. But then one night, something strange and irresistible calls out to Lucky. She burrows through a wall to find a tarnished silver spoon, humming with otherworldly energy.
What?
Etched with a crooked-nosed witch and the word Salem. Lucky is familiar with the magic of her indigenous ancestors, but she has no idea that the spoon connects her to a teeming network of witches across North America who have anxiously awaited her discovery. Enter VenCo, A front company fueled by vast resources of dark money. Its name is an anagram of coven.
Oh, thank you. I never would have figured that out on my own.
I didn't.
Certainly not from the cover, which pretends the title is VenCo Coven, VenCo Coven.
That wasn't even the cover that I had.
Nope, this is the theme. You're going to see this happen again and again. The author is like, I don't trust you to figure anything out. Here it is.
Anyway, VenCo's witches hide in plain sight wherever women gather. Tupperware parties, mommy and me classes, suburban book clubs.
Oh my god,
Since colonial times, they have awaited the moment the 7 spoons will come together and ignite a new era, returning women to their rightful power.
So, if I go to Curves, what you're telling me is that I can harness unknown power?
The portal to hell is
I
in a
guess
curve.
so.
It's the ladies' gym.
Find your power at your local Weight Watchers. Call now.
But as reckoning approaches, a very powerful adversary is stalking their every move. He's J. Christos, a roguish and deadly witch hunter, as old as witchcraft itself. To find the last spoon, Lucky and Stella embark on a rollicking and dangerous road trip to the darkly magical city of New Orleans.
Who is Stella?
Where the final showdown... the
Grandmother.
Oh, right.
Grandmother.
Oh, yeah. There's already so many characters.
Where the final showdown will determine whether VenCo will usher in a new beginning or remain underground forever. A wildly imaginative and compulsively readable fantasia of adventure, history, Americana, feminism, and magic. VenCo is a novel only the supremely gifted Cherie Dimaline could write.
You know, I
We're already killing D.
hadn't read that yet. I hadn't read
I
the
love when a
yet.
book
That was-
has to describe itself as readable.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
That's the lowest bar to clear.
Does your summary also include the word readable?
Maybe? I'm not sure, actually, to be honest with you.
No, it does not. Not included. You have to buy that separately.
Okay, we're going to give D a break here to recover with me giving you the characters and setting. The setting is just North America
Yeah,
in general.
it's
I mean-
Toronto for a second, and then it's generally Salem, southeastern Massachusetts, New Orleans, and then they're in like Missouri for a hot second or somewhere. Yeah, it's kind of the eastern seaboard,
Yeah.
really. That's where we are.
We have, for characters, the Maiden, Mother, and Crone version 4.7 or something of like how many Maiden, Mother, and Crones have been for this VenCo company. They seem to be omniscient and possibly omnipotent, but only interfere with stuff sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, who knows?
Then there are the 7 witches who will complete the circle or whatever. Mina Good, that's her last name, is Good, because we can't remember any other names from the Salem witch trials. Her wife, Wendy, Freya, Letty, Morticia, our main protagonist, Lucky St. James, and Stella, Lucky's grandmother / surprise 7th witch in the 3rd act. We also have appearances by Anya, Lucky's mom, in flashbacks. And then, of course, the aforementioned J. Christos, a.k.a. Horny Murder Jesus, who is a Benandante, which is not a merger between Ben and Jerry's and Talenti, but a Slavo-Italian dream sorcerer who hunts witches, but who himself is also immortal and magically fuckable, and he can erase your memories for some reason. And then we have various other watchers and tenders and bookers who are like adjacent to being like they're described as not witches.
No.
But
They're
they
witches.
also kind of have.
They're witches who haven't had children, so witches without progeny, and they therefore develop certain skills depending on their title. I don't really know which direction that goes. It's like, oh, you didn't have a kid by 45, therefore you're a fucking bookworm now. Like, I don't know how that works, but they specifically are witches who have not had offspring. Biologically,
I see.
presumably.
All right. I was confused because they kind of othered them a little bit, and I was like, I don't understand. How are they different?
It was weird, but then there's one sentence that's like, they're witches without kids, and you're like, oh, okay, all right, I
I
guess.
probably skimmed
good.
that
So
sentence.
this is the brand of feminism that reduces women to reproductive biology, and that's progressive somehow?
Not really, because one of the 7 spoon witches is a trans woman, but yeah, they do seem to have this, like,
Okay.
ooh, motherhood important and special, and clearly you
But
can only
specifically
ascend to the
biological
level of
motherhood.
right. Yeah, so that is a little
Okay.
bit of a not great undertone.
So we're there. That's our starting point.
This is like an edgy Winx Club. This is like the same plot as the Winx Club.
I don't know
Specifically
what
the
that is.
Netflix reboot of Winx Club. So Winx
Yeah.
Club was originally a children's cartoon about magical fairies who get powers, and then Netflix
Yeah.
rebooted it as like Hogwarts but evil.
Okay, weird choice.
Anyway, now let's get to the summary
All
that
right.
Paris and I kind of co-wrote here. And this is just so that the listeners can kind of follow along with what we're talking about here. We're going to hit like the real...
Just the main plot points. And
So we're going to give this to D to read because based on their reaction to the back of the book summary, I'm sure us fleshing it out even more will, finally end everything.
I'm looking
that's
forward
really what
to
we're trying to
this.
do.
All
right, D.
Okay. Lucky St. James had a turbulent upbringing in Toronto with her complicated mother who did her best, but still probably did a lot of crimes, and an abusive addict father who robbed them routinely for drug money. That's not funny, but I am laughing anyway.
yeah, it's not great.
Sounds
familiar.
Sounds
familiar.
You guys know that thing where if you watch like a Lifetime movie and like it starts getting into like a depressing territory where it starts getting funny?
Where it's just like cartoonish levels of tragedy?
Yeah.
Oh, where you mean it's like my entire life and upbringing? Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like sometimes you just like, oh, this is really weird. As an adult, she's feeling a bit adrift. She dreams of being a writer, wrestles with her identity as a mixed indigenous woman, and is sort of in love with her best friend, but is afraid to make a move. Lucky also takes care of her grandmother, Stella, who is experiencing bouts of dementia that cause her to forget things and wander off alone. And the temp gigs aren't cutting it for Lucky in terms of being able to provide for them both. Well, I predicted that. It really is just getting sadder. She suddenly gets an eviction notice from the apartment they've lived in her entire life, and things seem as bleak as ever. But one day, while down in her apartment building's basement doing some laundry, she decides to follow up on Stella's old story about a secret tunnel. And unlocks an old locker in the laundry room that conceals it. What?
You haven't even started to get to the nonsense, so you really gotta, keep it together.
Right now, we're just in a basement. D, you do you even want to know what's in store?
I'm trying to imagine. My grandma has been telling me since I was young about a tunnel in the basement in a locker, and I just haven't given a fuck about it till now.
Yeah, until now. Yeah, it took 21 years or 25 years or something, but now I guess it's time.
I love the idea of being like so uncurious about it for decades.
Yeah.
Inside the tunnel is a commemorative spoon. Fuck me. It's a commemorative Salem witch spoon. And thus her fortunes have turned.
This is worth at least $6 on eBay. Saved!
If it's real, it's like $250. Because it's silver, mostly.
Yeah.
She feels a connection to the spoon and a vague sense of purpose. I love that it's vague. Keeping it with her at all times. Like I do with my commemorative spoons. Mine's a droopy dog, but...
you just have
my droopy dog coven. Finally.
You gotta be carrying. You gotta always have your spoons ready to go.
Why does it... Alright, why is it a tunnel and not just in the locker?
Because they needed an interesting
mysterious
story.
And magical.
Actually, that's a good point because, like, the story for the tunnel doesn't make you're right. It could have just been like, "Hey, there's a weird old locker downstairs. Here's the key." Yeah, you're right. Why the fuck was there a tunnel? God damn it! I'm mad about something else.
Days after finding the spoon, Lucky is approached by Freya, a representative of VenCo, which is apparently a publishing house of some sort, who offers her a writing-related job at the company. Freya promises Lucky that she can use her writing skills for quote-unquote good, but she has to attend an interview in Salem, Massachusetts at VenCo's East Coast headquarters. Considering the fact she doesn't have anything better going on and she's about to get evicted, Lucky decides to go for it and take Stella along for the trip. Meanwhile, Jake Christos, immortal and horny witch hunter, has arisen from just fucking around, I guess, in his desert mansion compound, and is pulled into action by sensing that another spoon has been found. That's actually how I work, too.
Summoned into business by spoons.
This is the 6th spoon, and if 7 special spoons are allowed to combine powers. Fuck me. Fucking Witch Captain Planet. The Witch Power Rangers will come into existence and defeat the forces of patriarchy once and for all. I was getting the opinion, I was under the impression that VenCo was going to be the bad guys.
No,
they're working for good by finding spoons.
Oh, corporations are good, actually. Okay.
Yes.
well, when they're run by women, they're good, you see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You just got a girl boss, and it's all fine.
Yeah.
Capitalism ain't bad if it's girl boss.
Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss.
Horny Jesus can't have that, so he decides that now is the time to prevent the spoons from falling into witch hands. Which I find myself saying all the time, instead of, I don't know, the many years beforehand that this has been happening. So he gets off his ass and starts fucking and sucking his way across America. Does he really?
I have the feeling you're elaborating a little on the text you've been given, D.
No, it says he
that's
starts
fine.
fucking and sucking his way across America.
That's
Incredible.
That's what we wrote.
That is what happens.
Incredible.
That is correct. He does fuck and suck in this journey.
Damn.
He fucks and sucks his way across America with a pit stop in Toronto to mess with Lucky's inconsequential to the story crush Malcolm by making him horny and jerking off, which the reader must have front row seats for reasons. Quick question. Has he never experienced
Yes.
horniness and jerk? How does this ruin her crush?
No, like...
It really doesn't.
He just doesn't matter.
The guy just rolls up on the guy and is like, "Now I'll make you horny for me," and it makes him go jerk off. The end.
Well, he gets information. He gets information out of him, but like he could have gotten that information from anyone since he has mind control powers. Also, why did we have to be in the room? Well, Malcolm was like, and then his hand went over his chest and then into his jeans and then his big hog came out and he jerked off all over the curtains or whatever it is. Like, why did this have to happen?
That's
Sorry,
good.
I'm so mad.
Magic. It's magical, Paris.
Magical.
Aren't you enjoying this magical journey?
Mm-hmm.
Lucky shows up in Salem and meets the other witches, who are part of the patriarchy Bustin' Coven. Apparently, when the 7 spoons witches possess the...
See, this is the same problem I had. This is the same problem I had. Every time I read the word spoon, I laughed and couldn't take it seriously.
Magic fucking spoons.
The 7th spoon of the 7th spoon!
When the 7 spoons and the witches who possess them are gathered, they will have the power to destroy the nameless them who oppress us all. However, there's a time limit on this for some reason. We really get no clue as to why this has to be done in like a couple of weeks or whatever. I mean, another good question. Patriarchy's been happening for a while.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
We are treated to the stories of how Mina, Morticia, Letty, and Freya found their spoons. That must be fucking riveting.
Oh, yeah.
We just assume Wendy found hers in a chocolate frosty or something. It's probably the most interesting story. Anyway, it's up to Lucky to find the 7th witch. Mina sends her off to talk to a few coven-adjacent women in various parts of the country in hopes that she will be led to the 7th witch. Meanwhile, the other witches stay in Salem and Google and just do spells they feel will work to help pull clues from their dreams, while drinking copious amounts of wine. Lucky uncovers where the 7th spoon is, and thus where the 7 witch might be, all while outrunning J. Christ. She and Stella track the 7th spoon, and therefore potentially the 7th witch, to New Orleans. Oh, we had to get them involved. Horny Jesus gets to the spoon first, and instead of just shoving the spoon up his immortal ass, or throwing it into the Mariana Trench and ending the whole runaround, Jay decides to get in a seduction fight with Lucky, since that... What?
Yep.
Yes, correct.
Yep.
Continue.
Did they have sex?
We will
Keep
elaborate
reading.
later. No, kind of, but no.
Keep
Horny
reading.
Jesus Christos. Turns out he can't directly attack her due to the cedar in her shoes.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
He can't attack her directly due to the cedar in her shoes. Which Lucky did because she
Oh.
remembered something her mom told her once but was never brought up previously.
Is he a moth?
I
Maybe.
best
He
explanation.
is some sort of bug, I suppose. So they rotate around each other in a room while getting slowly undressed and verbally sparring. This is actually what me and my boyfriend do.
That's how you get ready for the deed.
Then use the conveniently located bondage gear. Tie themselves up on a bed and fight in dream space? Why do they have to be tied up for that?
What?
No reason.
Because
Where-
they...
No reason.
Actually, I don't know. I don't remember why. I think just because they're like, well, if we're both tied up, then we can't physically hurt each other, is the logic.
But then why not remain untied up so you can physically hurt each other? I feel like
Yeah.
that would be a better strategy. To be like, yeah, I'll definitely tie myself up and not kill you while you're in dream space, bro. Like,
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, so she has this magical cedar, and he literally can't touch her with the cedar in her shoes.
so why not wait till he ties himself up for dream times and then use your ropes to strangle him?
Yeah,
in
you
meat
know, Ken,
space.
I asked myself this question more than once.
These are all valid,
Yeah.
valid thoughts and feelings to be having.
Thank you for validating my lived experience, Chris.
This is a lot, you guys. This is a lot to take in.
Why do you think we asked you here?
Yeah, we needed you today.
Because pain shared is pain halved?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so they just have bondage gear around. They tie themselves up on a bed to fight in dream space, where Lucky has the advantage due to other things her mother taught her. She tricks
Dude
Jay
also
into...
the advantage in meat space because he can't touch her, so she
I
could
mean,
just
she's
kill
got
him.
every advantage, yeah.
Yeah.
Just put the spoon through his eyeball and have done with it. Why is this such
Yeah.
a problem?
Well, I think because he has like enfuckinating ability, because like he can make anybody want to fuck him, and so it's sort of working on her, but she's able to like fight against it, and she's, I think, worried that on the physical plane he's gonna get the best of her with his dick and then kill her. But then the cedar, right? So I mean, presumably his dick can't get next to her if he can't even touch her with his hands, right? So I don't
Again, go straight for the dick with the spoon, and this is a solved problem.
Just scoop it right out. Like pudding.
Take us home, D. Take us home. Home to
She
Buzzard's
tricks Jay
Bay.
in the dreams. She tricks Jay in the dream space and is able to locate the seventh spoon in Jay's dead ex-boyfriend's pajama pocket on the ground floor. There's a lot of descriptors. Wake up, grab
Yes.
it, and get away. She doesn't kill Jay then and there for reasons, but she does set the house on fire, which is a good way to kill someone.
Great.
Anyway, turns out the seventh witch was Stella, despite there being zero indication of that. The circle is complete, and now they can get to work. Although they have no idea what that work is, or when to do it, or how.
And thus, patriarchy was ended forever.
The VenCo C-suite shows up at the last minute to light Jay on fire.
Again?
Was he not already on fire?
He was a little on fire, but then he gets out.
After he runs out of the burning house and kills him, which made this whole thing feel largely pointless. The end.
Oh my god, Chris.
All
the
right.
editing on that is going to be a nightmare. Might have to ask D to just try to straight read it so you can get some good pieces.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Well,
So
this
now
has
that
been
you guys
great.
have context,
This has been lovely. Thank you for having us on. We'll talk to you sometime soon. Support us on Patreon, and good night.
Ken's definitely not moving and not giving us his new address. That's definitely not happening right now.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, all right. So that summary was difficult to get through because we did, of course, include all of the most ridiculous plot points. But before we get started, I do have a little spiel, if you'll all allow me a little spiel here. So this author is an Indigenous author. She is Métis herself, just like the main character, Lucky. And, I want to support marginalized authors. I want to support Indigenous authors. I try very hard to read work by marginalized groups. And so I was excited to read something by an Indigenous author. I've in fact read one of Cherie Dimaline's short stories in the collection Never Whistle at Night, which Chris actually got me for holiday time this past year. And I don't know, it's I hate to give such a bad review to a marginalized author, but at the same time, I'm not going to pretend I like something just because it's, by an author that I might want to support for a lot of different reasons. In any case, I think that I would be willing to try one of her other books because it seems like she writes things in a lot of different, different worlds. Like they're not all VenCo, right? So this isn't me saying like Cherie Dimaline fucking sucks, don't support her. This one book was very not for me and has a lot of problems. And I just want to say that like, don't go out and attack this author, and I am willing to try some of her other work, but this one's a stinker. I'm sorry. It's just not, it's got a lot of issues and I don't think any of us liked it. Chris really hated it. I hated it too, but I feel like Chris was sick and hating it, which was worse because he had a very bad cold or something. But in any case, yeah, I just wanted a little spiel. So please don't go and like try to attack Cherie Dimaline. Like, and again, I am willing to go read more of her work about different things. I just think this particular topic chosen was poor, and then the execution was also didn't quite hit the mark for me. So anyway, that's my spiel. If anyone else wants to add on, go for it. Otherwise, we can just get into the meat here.
Can I, Paris, before we get into further ranting here?
Yes.
Are we even doing the rubric at this point?
Sorry,
or are we gone?
Maybe we should back up. And start at the top. Hey, do we want to talk about technical construction real quick? Because we don't have much to say on this part.
Yeah, I just want to really gloss over a couple of these rubric categories that we've been doing here because we've already been well deep into plot and characters here, which you can already tell is going to get a -1 from us. So let's just really nicely tie up some of the odds and ends here, like technical construction, as Paris was putting it. So Paris.
Cover design needs work.
Yeah, cover. Ooh, yeah, we didn't talk about that. Cover design, not good. And
cover
again,
design,
I don't
real,
know.
VenCo Coven, my favorite novel.
The cover design is lame, at least the one that I saw, but, this is often a choice of the publishing house, so who knows if Cherie had any say in this one. But it just says VenCo Coven, and there's yellow birds on it. It's just not a good cover. Visually speaking, like, it's kind of bland.
And it confuses you as to what the actual title is. The title is just the word VenCo.
VenCo Coven,
not VenCo Coven, VenCo Coven.
Yeah, or is the title Coven, and then, yeah, and I don't know, it's just like, don't give it away, like on the cover, like let your audience read your book and consume it and think about it and turn it over in their little minds and go, oh, Coven. I mean, it's still dumb, but like, let them figure it out. It's worse when you just tell us on the cover. Jeez, give your readers a little credit. So yeah, Ken, good point. Cover, not great. Typos, there were only 2 that I noticed. This was fine. In terms of like formatting and layout, it was normal. Although I would like to put forth a motion. I would like to put forth a motion to outlaw chapter titles. I hate them, especially when they try to be cutesy or they literally just tell you what is in the chapter verbatim. Like, why are we doing this? These books aren't reference material. I don't need to go back and find, the chapter about horny Jesus on the airplane. I mean, okay, here's a selection. Here's a selection of the chapter titles in this book, and you can see why I hated them. A complete fucking 180 over General Tso's chicken and shitty rice. Jay finds the weak link. The liar, the witch, and the wardrobe. I don't think titles like this serve a purpose.
Counterpoint. I love those. I think they're fun. They remind me of Victorian Penny Dreadful chapter titles. They're a hoot and a holler. I enjoy them a lot, and I think more books should have them. And now Paris and I will have to fight to the death with our magical spoons.
Oh, they're gonna
Fine,
fight you.
actual
Oh, no.
author on this podcast.
Fight.
I'm just gonna break a chair.
I kind of agree. I agree with Paris on this one. Because these aren't the Penny Dreadful titles.
Oh no, podcast divorce.
The Penny Dreadful titles tell you something about what you're about to encounter, and
So does the General
a complete
Tso's
fucking
chicken thing.
180.
Come on.
There's like a limit
It's
to
a
like
good
how
time.
fucking cute you think you're being, and this is like breaching it.
I don't know. This is winning me over.
Like
I'm
I just
enjoying
think,
this.
No, like I think there's a big difference between like oh, Sir Francis Varney enjoys breakfast, and then that being a chapter where he gets like thrown off a flight of stairs at breakfast. And, like, that makes me laugh. But, like, I don't know, like, a complete fucking 180 over General Tso's chicken and shitty rice. Like, I know you think you're being cute. I know it. And it's, like, it's making me angry.
Yeah,
I love it.
Well,
There's a diff.
you know what?
Like, there's a
obviously,
diff.
this is a taste thing.
The coven is broken. The circle is incomplete. We'll
Now
never be free of these
patriarchy
terrible
wins.
books.
Oh no. Anyway, I don't know. I just like them. It's fine if you do like chapter titles, but I found them upsetting and distracting when I'm just trying to get through this book. Anyway, punctuation, yeah, everything was totally crafted well from this perspective. This was clearly edited, it was professionally done. No complaints there. This easily clears the bar for, technical stuff. I mean, this was well done in that sense.
Yeah. Would you like to give it 1 point, Paris?
Yes, I would like to give it a 1 point out of -1, 0, or 1. 1.
I'm
Yeah.
giving it 10 points for
Okay.
the chapter titles.
Ken, that's not on the scale. Damn it.
Okay. Well, now we can move sort of back into the plot and characters section.
Also, while we're at it, why didn't Jesus Christ just melt the spoon?
A fantastic question.
We said that the whole time is like he just holds on to the spoon. The whole time, J. Christ here is like, I've tracked down the spoon and now it's in my possession. I'll squirrel it away and wait for the witch to come to me so I can finally defeat the witch. If you're trying to prevent the circle from closing, you just eat the spoon or melt it or like do anything.
I love that your first like inclination was I'm gonna eat the spoon.
Eat the spoon. Ingest spoon. But no, like, it's hard enough to keep actual, like, souvenir spoons out of the hands of scrappers, people who are melting them down for the silver value, because the per ounce weight of silver is often worth more than any handcrafted antique, no matter how beautiful. So, like,
Right.
how did the spoon survive this long in the first place? And also, it's so easy to get rid of those things. It's so
They're
easy.
Well,
pretty
I mean-
Can I
simple.
also add that the seventh spoon was found in like a diner in New Orleans being used as a spoon.
No! Souvenir
So
spoon's way too small.
So
What?
it seems like it would actually be easier. It would be pretty simple to actually just chuck it in a direction, and it would be like equally difficult to find.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
So the text would have us believe that horny Jesus did not immediately...
One of these are actual size spoons that you could use for something.
Well, yeah. In my mind, I was like, I don't know, maybe they were using it for like a dessert spoon or tea or coffee spoon or
No,
something.
I
right?
have
But-
one of these spoons. I have a Salem souvenir spoon. It fits in the palm of my hand. These things are dinky.
Some of the later ones are spoon sized.
Yeah, but the Salem ones in particular, Ken's right. They are quite small.
Yeah, that's true. I was just thinking because of I wasn't kidding about the droopy dog one. I have a droopy dog souvenir spoon that I use to eat cereal.
Okay, so
That seems like a very droopy food.
yeah. Anyway, the author would have us believe in the text that horny Jesus doesn't destroy the spoon immediately because his pride and his unrelenting horniness is, wanting this interaction with the woman, with the witch, so he can best her because he has a vendetta against witches because Prudence, the witch from, 400 years ago, fucked him and broke his heart and tried to kill him and set him on the path to witch murder or whatever. So, like, that's the sort of textual reasoning. But I still feel like it doesn't make sense because, again, if his whole deal is like, I hate all witches and women, then yeah, the fastest way to, like, getting your way and, like, being king of everything and not having to deal with these fucking women anymore is destroying the spoon, right? Right? And I guess, I don't know, the spoons are also magicked. They were ensorcelled by a tender a couple hundred years ago, but I don't know if that means that they are indestructible. That's certainly never mentioned or hinted at in the text, so...
Wait, a couple hundred years ago, how old is the Salem souvenir spoon?
They were created in 1891. 1891 was the first year. Yeah, and that was...
so 100.
I was going to say, someone else do the math. I can't...
100 yeah, I can't math. 100. Let's just call it 170 years and call it a day. Yeah, so not that long ago, all things considered.
Not even 150. Like 1890 to 1990 is 100, and 1990 to today is 34.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So
yeah,
134
so
years.
144. Is that right? 34. Yeah,
134.
yeah, you're right. 134. Look at that. We did the math live on the show. Look at us, mathematics professors over here. Thank you, Ken, for that.
So
there
were witches at the World's Fair hexing spoons?
No, there were witches.
I
Okay,
suppose.
the story. Wow, we are so fucking. We're just freewheeling here. So in the story, the author posits that Daniel Lowe, the jeweler from Salem who made the Salem witch spoons, after the German version that he saw when he was on a trip the year before. You know, he was in Germany on a trip and he was like, oh, yo, these tourist towns really, they got the souvenir game on lock. If I just make these stupid little spoons, people will buy them. I'll be rich. And you know what? He was fucking right. So he, like, went home and made these stupid little spoons with the Salem and the witch or whatever. But so that's actually true. That is reality. But in the book, the author paints Daniel Lowe as an evil, misogynist, witch-murdering asshole who makes a spoon specifically to get back at witches? Which, like...
My man's was just a jeweler. Leave him alone.
Daniel, I don't know what Daniel Lowe ever did to anybody, but apparently, in the story, he and his son are conspiring, and they decide, you know what? Fuck those witches. We're gonna make a buck and make those witches look bad. We're gonna make the witch on the spoon look like a old hag, like, screw them or whatever. And their maid servant is actually a witch attender. So she overhears this and is like, fuck them. They're going to try to make spoons against witches. I'm going to hex those spoons. So she goes, like, figures out when the shipment of silver is coming in, or when the spoons are going out or whatever, sinks onto the boat and sorcels them in a night-long ritual. You know, the 7 spoons that were created, I guess, in the first batch. And I don't know that the spell was very specific, Chris. Do you remember if it was like, and these 7 spoons will give rise to the 7 who will save us? Or was it just like, I don't know, I just kind of want...
Yes, it was that. It was
that?
specifically, okay. I am going to cast the spell so that whomsoever possesses these spoons shall have the power to undo all of the oppressive patriarchy and things that keep witches and women down. But later, also there's a time limit.
Fantastic.
But why? Hang on, let me just double check that real quick, because I wasn't...
This feels like a Netflix young adult series that doesn't exist yet.
No, it does. It's Winx Club.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sure it's going to exist any second. I'm sure that this is going to be turned into a series at any moment. Just sneeze and it'll be on Netflix.
No, but then they can see through your eyes if you sneeze.
What?
That's how they get you.
Sorry, what?
Oh, that's a plot point.
Sorry,
Stella
what?
sneezes, and that Stella sneezes one time in front of Jay Christ, and that means Jay Christ can see through her eyes.
Oh man, COVID must have been great for him. He can see everybody.
Oh,
That feels like the author's poorly concealed fetish.
All right, the spoon origin story. It is said that the coven that will bring us back to our rightful place is still far off, Annie lamented. When will this renewed interest from the Lowes and their ilk change the trajectory? Sarah tapped the wooden bar top. That is why we need to act. We have to ensure the coven can come together. that they can find one another no matter what. This message must get through the ears, even if our mouths are silenced, even if the Benandanti catch wind and use the latest campaign to hunt on a larger scale. We need to attach the message to something, an object of sorts, so that it can be found no matter what is to come. An object? What object are you thinking of? I think the Lows are about to create one that could be of use. Repurposing a thing of one intent to the exact opposite intent is in itself a powerful spell. It's perfect. So that's it. And then we get like a little scene where she goes and does the spell, but it doesn't say that's all we get of how they get ensorcelled, right?
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. There would come a day when the right bloodlines and teachings would come together in 7 descendants, bringing the exact right 7 witches into the world. These witches would form a coven to bring down that which sought to destroy them again and again. The spoons, now safely sailing away to shops and homes across the country, would act as the calling card to bring them together. The right witches at the right moment.
But why the right moment is now is never explained.
Yeah, why I don't... I guess I'm just confused by, like... Yeah, the timing all seems a little weird, right? It's like, why was it only 134 years later? I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. It could have been 5 years later, right? But
I would say the reason it is in our modern world is because that is the world the author lives in, and thus it is easier to research the day-to-day habits than, say, the habits of any other historical period.
Fair enough.
Oh, sure, that's the, like, real-life reason, Ken, but, like, the in-fiction reason... Who the fuck knows?
Yeah, I also just like okay, so if there's already lore in your religion that's like, you know, the one true coven's gonna come about, why do you think that you can like assist with that or like force it to happen faster with spoons? I just it's a little weird to me. I guess whatever you want to do in your magic book that's not reality, fine. The spoons it is, I suppose. I appreciate that she was like, okay, I'm actually going to use the real name of the guy who actually made the spoons and like get the year right and all that stuff. But I don't know. The spoons really feel extremely silly to me in a book that is not silly, that is very serious. So it just...
Is it, Paris?
What?
Is it serious and not silly?
It seems pretty silly.
I might want to push back on that one. Yeah, well, it seems very silly.
But I don't think the author thinks
I understand you mean authorial intent. It is meant to be serious.
That's what I meant.
But
yeah,
it really comes
right.
across as silly.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. The author doesn't think it's silly, but it just made me laugh every time. And I was like, oh, these stupid little spoons, you know?
Is it a commentary on the spoons theory of energy for disabled folks?
No. There's no
what?
way. No, there's no one disabled in the book. There's no one with any kind of differing anything. It's pretty much just... No, I don't think so. I also thought of that at first.
The spoons are a magical source of power, but they're... Okay.
Well, they're not a source. They're like a tool, right? But I just... Okay, here's the thing. For me, if you're going to be like, okay, I'm writing a book about magic and there's going to be magical objects, why not make objects that actually have something to do with, like, the final assembly of the group? You know, like if, I don't know, one person's a fencer and she gets, like, a 6 sword, and then the other one's a killer researcher and she gets this, like, ancient tome of magic, and, you know, those things can be used in the fight.
And the other one's an antiques tailor and she gets a silver souvenir spoon.
Yeah,
that's right.
The spoons were just like, give me something useful. God, if they had been small daggers, I would have been happy with that. Like, at least you could stab someone with a dagger. What do you do with a spoon? A tiny little spoon.
If you
can't even
believe
eat
in
dessert
yourself,
with it.
you can stab someone with a souvenir spoon.
You can. It's not
Yo, have you ever
recommended.
grapefruit spoon? Murderously sharp.
Grapefruit spoons are fucking evil. I have used them to eat grapefruits, not to stab people, for the record.
Yeah. That's the story we're going with.
Harris, you're part of the Grapefruit Coven.
Oh, God
once
damn
and
it.
for all. You can throw off the oppressive chains of big fruit. I don't know,
Yeah.
man.
You have the power to force people to metabolize their medication way too fast.
I was about to talk about the Salem thing and how it's just a pet peeve of mine that, A, we always need to go back to Salem whenever we want to talk about the occult or witches, when that is in fact completely needless because the people accused of witchcraft in Salem were not doing witchcraft. And even if you want to, in your fantasy world, say, oh, but they really were witches, which is a very popular thing to do, please go anywhere else. Please go fucking anywhere else. Or if you are going to go back to Salem, focus on different people. It's like every book we read that goes back to Salem, it's always the Goods, the Hawthorns, the Proctors. Like, what about Candy? What about Deliverance Dane, Dorcas Hoare, Joseph Emmons? Talk to me about any other person or bloodline, for the love of fuck, for the love of history. It's so lame that every single book does the same thing. And it just stinks of a lack of creativity and just cashing in on, popular stupid witch books. Like, it just kills me. I hate it. There's like, the entire world is full of occult and magic stuff that does not have to do with North America or New England, and yet we're always back here. We can't fucking escape. Like, we're in Salem. We even go back to Buzzards Bay, which is where me and Dee grew up. So we were particularly upset, and where Ken migrated to from Dragonland. And, so it was just like...
Is that where I'm from? Oh my god, my true origins at last! Finally! My birthright!
Yes! You're a dragon man from the Dragonlands.
This explains so much.
I know, doesn't it? I guess, yeah, so for me, it feels uncreative and forced and just a cash in on a trendy topic, right? Like that's kind of how it feels.
It's not even the first Indigenous witch in Salem novel I've read, because there is also the series Witch and Sorceress that came out when I was but a wee teen.
Oh, I don't know anything about that. Say more.
And like, even if you're trapped in New England, there were other witch trials in New England other than Salem.
Dorchester was hanging witches before Salem was. Like you want to talk
Historic
about
Deerfield,
Dorchester?
as we are recording this, is doing a lecture series on witch trials throughout New England that weren't in Salem.
Yeah, they were like, people were getting accused of witchcraft and killed for it all over the place. I guess it felt like a huge missed opportunity here, because even though the main character is Indigenous and some of the other characters are also mixed with Indigenous or Caribbean or, or Black or whatever, we sort of never see... It doesn't seem like we're seeing magic from different perspectives or different cultures. And I know the author's Indigenous and tried to inject some indigeneity into it, but it just still felt like we were trapped in the fucking white man's tourist magic shop in Salem on Essex Street. Like, I just felt like I was still there. Like, I still can't
I was
escape.
getting big white witch vibes from your description of how the coven was set up and everything that was going through the plot.
My biggest problem with people constantly yammering on about, like, the Salem witch stuff is it bugs me because none of, like, very, very notably, none of those people were witches.
Yeah. So none of them were doing magic. The only magic that was being done was English folk magic, which bears very little to no resemblance to modern-day Wicca, which is where the Maiden Mother Crone thing comes from.
And then, like, some of it was Christian folk magic, which is different.
They do touch upon some sort of tangentially Christian folk magic traditions in the book, because they visit a couple people who live out in the woods and have different, a different way of doing things. But yeah, and it's weird because the book takes pains to make sure the characters are like a pretty good cross-section of ethnicities and sexual identities and gender identity. I mean, we have a trans woman witch, we have mixed race, Indigenous witches, Black witches, we have Creole witches, we have, white New York City witches. We kind of have a good, there's enough of a, like I said, a good cross-section of different folks. But it's still clinging to this sort of, like you said, sort of, I don't know, white women who drink wine and like read a Wicca book from 1976 or something. It's just can't get the stink off of it, you know.
The point I was trying to raise before, by the way, was even sort of like in the context of the book, you know, Jay Christos is out here finally getting off his ass looking for witches, and he's like, he has to like vaguely sense his way to where they are. And I mean, guess what happens? He ends up sensing his way over to Salem, Massachusetts. And even in his head, he's like, man, I should have looked here first. I feel like it's kind of obvious. I should have been here already. It's kind of funny, huh? Wow, Salem, who'd have thought? And I was like, yeah, Jay, who'd have thought?
Had a thought, and then the witches stole it.
I guess I guess I can wrap this up by saying this shit felt like feminist Highlander, and I don't mean that as a compliment.
Oh, no.
Ooh, that's rough.
Oh, no.
Well, here's
no.
the thing. Here's the thing. Like, I am always out here
I remember
looking
my
for...
thought. The witches gave it back.
Oh, go ahead.
Does the trans woman character exist for any purpose other than so that the author can say she doesn't necessarily believe in the biological gender essentialist nonsense? Does she serve any purpose other than, like, as someone the writer can point to and say, not all women need to have a uterus, even though those that don't use their uterus to procreate don't become the most powerful kind of witches?
You know, that is a great point. And I think, I feel like Freya is really just in there to be
Does she have, like,
hey!
agency? Does she do anything? Does she grow or change as a character over the course of the book? Could she be replaced by a lamp with the word transgender on it?
Yes, Ken, you're correct.
It's that one.
Yeah, it's the lamp. Freya's the lamp.
Cool. Anyway, back to the story.
Yeah. Hey, transgender lamp is my favorite character.
Yeah. Well, and the other bummer thing about it is she's a trans woman, and of course she's like a hyper feminine, you couldn't clock her trans woman, right? Because she has to explain to the main character that she's trans in a clever way, because no one would ever know by looking at her, which is like not.
Some trans people get to live that life, but not everyone does, and not everyone should have to, frankly.
And not every trans person wants to either, is the other thing. And not every, and there's plenty of like non-binary people, and I don't know. I think you convinced me that Freya's a lamp. God damn it. Sucks. Yeah, I guess points off for intersectionality, because you're right. Freya could have been replaced by literally any other character, any person, and it wouldn't have made a difference. And no, they didn't grow or change. They were just sort of they were a plot device, really, because they were the one who goes to offer Lucky the job at VenCo, but anyone could have done that. I mean, it didn't necessarily have to be Freya. So yeah, fair point for Ken. I'm gonna take a point away from this book and give it to Ken.
It feels gross earning points off this book, frankly.
Take your points and go.
We can put them in a box.
Points. Take the gross points, Ken.
Is this not just me benefiting from the patriarchy?
Yeah, that's me. I'm the one doing it. You must take these gross points.
And here's the thing. I think the thing that really sort of broke my heart a little bit about this book is, like, I'm always out here looking for anti-capitalist, anti-patriarchal themes in books, anti-racist ideas. We're always looking for that in books. In fact, Chris and I are always complaining about how books are always stuck sort of in like racist, capitalist, patriarchal themes. So we were, I had some hope as I was reading this and going, okay, well, they've got sort of the bigger overarching themes, right? But it just didn't deliver at all. It really felt like a backdrop. It didn't feel like it actually meant anything or worked in the story.
It's hard to have like a revolutionary theme when it's a corporation.
Well, but even that aside, even if you take VenCo out of it, right? Because honestly, VenCo isn't even a part of the book. The only thing that VenCo really does is kill the big evil guy at the end, rendering half of the plot pointless, and then they fret and stuff about the witches so to give you a fake sense of tension. And I guess they provide money for them to do things.
They also give the book its title, to be fair. Yes,
but point is, like, that concept actually has nothing to do with the main story, which is, like, Lucky and the other witches the other 7 finding each other to become, I don't know, the witch Power Rangers or whatever, and defeating Jay, the last Benandanti. Like, that's a story in itself. I don't understand why we needed this layer of, like, oh, the corporation, when it's literally, like, it's the first chapter, which was stupid, because then it's just like, this is what VenCo is. And isn't it crazy that the crone is, like, fucking her manservant? Ha ha, hee hee, ho ho. Anyway, back to the actual story I'm going to tell. And then it just flashes to them a couple of times, and then they come in at the end to light horny Jesus on fire once and for all. So I don't know, I'm just not seeing it. It's like she had an idea and she was like, oh, I guess I'll throw this in there with this story, and it just didn't need to be there. It just didn't work for me. I don't know, Chris, how did you feel? You actually read this whole thing with me, so
I think the author was trying to, do like we're going to turn the levers of power on their head, and now it shall be the women in control using corporate power to the advantage of the oppressed and stepped upon. But I agree with you that it, like, the mechanism of the corporation isn't ever really used in not in a satisfying way at all. And you didn't have to have it be a corporation. It could have just been a loose coven of witches.
Right.
So, like, they don't...
Could it not be a co-op?
Also that.
Yeah, that
then co-op, perhaps, but then the anagram doesn't work. You have to call it Covenop or Po-Coven or something. So that kind of ruins it. I gotta say, Paris, earlier when you were saying, like, you gotta trust your readers, you gotta really make sure, give them a sense of mystery, and you don't have to beat them over the head with things. They're not that stupid. I was that stupid. I was looking at this book and it's VenCo. Oh, I wonder what that is. And not until we presented this book to the Terrible Antiques Freaks book club chat, and Ken was like, oh, it's like VenCo Coven. Because, by the way, our cover was not the cover that you saw, Ken.
That's true.
We have a completely different cover. It just says VenCo with, like, a raven on the front or something like that.
I was going by the cover I got from the #1 search result on Goodreads, which just says VenCo Coven,
reasonable.
VenCo Coven, and then author name.
Totally reasonable. Also, I don't look at covers for the books we read. I don't even read the back of the book or anything like that. I just hop right in.
We just jumped in.
So I'm reading the whole thing. I'm
true.
like, I'm reading the whole thing, and it's like, VenCo, oh, I wonder what that could be. And then you finally say it in the chat, and I'm like, oh, I'm real dumb. I'm the stupid one. Or is it that it's so stupid that my brain just, like, protected me from it?
Yeah, I think it was
refused to
that.
even begin to think about.
I'm inclined to believe the latter, yeah.
Right, you were already sick, and your brain was like, "This guy can't take any more pathogens. We can't do this to him, body. We gotta keep it together. We gotta get over this cold first."
I don't know. I'm totally willing to admit that I'm a very stupid man. So,
well, we'll talk about the whole, giving your readers credit thing in a moment. Let's just finish up with general coherent stuff. I mean, I think one of the worst parts about this, other than the spoon magic being kind of silly and not super easy to get on board with, was the final battle between Lucky and Horny Jesus. And by the way, Lucky actually refers to it as the final battle or the last battle in text, which I think is a heinous writing crime. It's a heinous writing crime.
Before you fight the final battle, you don't know it's the final battle. And honestly, after you fight the final battle, you don't know it's the final battle. Like, that is a perspective that comes with history.
Page 352. She was in New Orleans. She was after the spoon. Somewhere in the Garden District, she was tied to a bed beside the Benandanti, and this was their final battle. Remember the wood.
You don't know that! You don't know that yet! How do you know that?
I think the worst part is probably that, like, I'm reading the book, like, I know it is because the book's over.
Yeah, you have 30 pages left in the book at this point.
Yeah, I'm looking at the fucking book. You don't gotta tell me, like...
Oh, is it because the character is a writer so she knows, like, she's in a plot structure?
Yes, I guess. Yeah. And okay, again, just in case you missed it in the first summary, the final battle between Lucky and Horny Jesus is one in which they verbally spar while taking off their clothes and circling each other because they can't touch each other because Lucky has cedar in her sock. And then they tie themselves up in bondage gear to have a dream battle. I don't know how anyone read this and was like, yeah, keep that in.
Is there a reason given why they have to take all their clothes off?
No.
Well, because... No, Horny Jesus, I mean, we jokingly call him Horny Jesus. His name is J. Christos, but we both were like, Jesus H. Christ, Jesus Horny Christ, so Horny Jesus was born.
Well, that's,
thank you, Chris,
J.
for that
Christos
one.
J. Christos sounds like a mind freak reject name.
Yeah, he's definitely the next Chris Angel. So the thing is, his character is there to be cartoonishly evil and rapey and overly sexual, and his powers are literally to seduce people and then make them forget that he like seduced them and fucked them. That's his whole deal. And I guess he's got some other magical powers too, because Benandanti are actually they're just witches, but they think that by killing witches they can gain the favor of the hegemony and survive, like an Inquisition, for example. So they're just like witches who hate their own kind, but they're men also.
So he's date raped the magician?
That's what this magical story was missing.
That is absolutely what he is, Ken.
He is basically Mystery from 2002. That's basically who this guy is. Do we remember Mystery?
Oh, we remember the pickup artist.
We
wish we could forget,
guy.
And yet...
That was his name, right? Am I misremembering?
Yeah,
that was his name.
No,
you're
on. You got it.
That's basically who this character is. So there you go. I just, and here's the thing is, like, again, I just don't think this character even needed to be in here. Why couldn't this book just be about the women finding the spoons and like developing their powers and figuring, or not spoons, let's say it's a different object, but like finding the magical objects that bring them together for their calling. I mean, not really my cup of tea, but at least it makes sense. And then we don't have to deal with like horny murder guy. Why is horny murder guy here? Because why? We need to really drive home that men are evil and rapists. Like, we know, we live in the world. Like, I feel
like there's a missed opportunity to just like, why not make the antagonist like the church? Like, if you're gonna be, like, leaning all of your weight on, like, the Salem bullshit, like, what, are you afraid of offending the Christians?
And you're calling him J. Christ, and you're calling him J. Christ at the same time?
Yeah, like, just say fuck it, and they're trying to be thwarted by priests. Like, why are you so afraid to do that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that would have made more sense. And also, I just wish the lines in this book between good and evil were not so precise and clean and separate. There's like, it's so painfully black and white. Like, all the women are witches and they're good, and the horny sorcerer man is evil, and he's like mustache twirling Disney villain levels of evil.
Yeah,
and all the women are just so good and they can never do anything wrong. And I don't know, it was such a bummer because the author clearly has an ability to craft good characters. Like Arnya, for example, Lucky's mother, who we only ever see in flashbacks, but we see quite a lot of them towards the beginning of the book. She is a great character. She's complicated. She's a little bit gray. She clearly really loves her daughter and does her best to take care of her and her mother, but, perhaps has an addiction herself, has an addict boyfriend, clearly does crimes to sort of make ends meet, is disappearing for weeks at a time. I felt like Arnya was really, really well developed and a character that was very real because of her complexities, and the rest of the book was just, man, it was just cardboard cutout after cardboard cutout. It was like, okay, we get that you have a lot of different characters from different places and backgrounds, but they're all unabashedly good and all women are perfect angels and all men are evil, because all the men in all the flashbacks too are all evil and bad. Like Freya's dad and brother suck and like yell at her and treat her like crap, and her mother enables them and supports them over Freya. And then like in Letty's flashback, she had an abusive baby daddy who like beat her, and Lucky's dad was a drug addict who stole their money all the time and probably beat her mom, and then also like left them. And I don't know, it's just it's really one-dimensional, and it killed me because the author clearly could write multi-dimensional characters like Arnya, but then didn't. I just don't know why you would choose to make something so one-dimensional when you have the skill, you have the aptitude, you have the ability to flesh things out and make them a little more complex and inventive and engrossing. But no, we're just gonna keep it real simple. God, I don't know. I just really don't like things that are so simple like that.
Well, as someone who is a part-time woman,
that's true. We got a part-time woman, a full-time woman, and then
the 2 full-time men.
Yeah.
We got the whole crew. As a part-time woman, I will say I haven't done any crimes, and you can't prove otherwise. So
we have it on record on our podcast several times over all of your crimes.
No, you don't. First of all, you don't let me talk about them. So as far as anyone's
we know what you did to the Mantis Shrimp Facebook group, D.
I didn't do anything to the group. I did.
I would just like
to one guy.
I would just like to say, Dee's escapades in the Mantis Shrimp Facebook group were a triumph, not a crime. I stand behind that 100.
Thank you.
I guess as Dee's lawyer, Harris can finally defend. That's not a crime.
Yeah, it's not a.
Show me in the.
It's not a crime.
In the legal code.
Is it a crime to seduce a man's wife? I don't think so.
Well, if you're Jay Christos, it is, because you have mind control powers, which also makes your villain very stupid, and the consequences feel like they don't matter. God damn.
I feel like when I like blurbed this book, I kind of thought that like VenCo would be sort of like a duder antagonist. Like maybe that the point would be that Lucky has to find her own path. Because like corporations aren't
by
good.
forming a corporation they too are assimilating, just like the witches are trying to fight against?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, like they're corporatizing witchdom and like, you know, trying to like ruin it from the inside by commodifying it. By the way, there's a line in this book, sidebar here, about, oh, magic is the only uncommodifiable thing out there. And like, bitch, what the fuck is a magic shop then?
This book,
right?
This
like,
book is happening.
Shop? What is David Blaine doing?
Yeah. What is this book doing, Chris?
Exactly. On top of that, and not only that, like even if you cast aside that, the moment you have any sort of ability to exert control over anything, or even just like use the sort of dowsing abilities and like seeking things through feelings abilities here, that's commodifiable too.
Oh yeah.
So I just had a real problem with that line. Had to jump in with that.
Also, buckwild to say magic has never been commodified when your magic is being literally passed down through a commercial product. Souvenir spoons are not like a homespun artisan craft. They are mass manufactured for no other reason than capitalism.
Yeah, that's a bold claim.
We slid into characters here, so let's finish that up. I'm going to quickly say Malcolm didn't need to be there at all, and we certainly didn't need a front row seat to him jerking off. All right, next point.
Yeah, I don't think we need to talk about that too much more.
I would love to talk about Stella suddenly being the seventh witch in like the last chapter and how silly that felt.
Stella to me is like the absolute nail in the coffin of coherence in regards to this plot in multiple dimensions. The first one being that it's in the book, in the text, it's like, oh, the spoon will lead you to the seventh witch, because in every other case, the witch finds the spoon and then the last witch that found her spoon is led to that new witch that found her spoon. But in this part of the story, they go on a huge road trip across the eastern seaboard looking for the spoon to find the witch. And then they find the spoon and they just hand it to Stella because Lucky's like, oh, it's always been you, Stella. So, which kind of ruins the way the other spoons were found and distributed.
Well, it ruins the whole first part of the adventure. Cause like, yeah, I don't understand how they would have no idea that it was Stella. And like the midway point of the book, Lucky has this brooch, but she's like wearing it in her hair for some reason. I don't know what that's about. And it was her mom's. And one of the other witches is like dreaming about it when they're trying to do like spells to get clues from their dreams or whatever. They do that a couple of times throughout the book. And sort of the leader witch, Mina, is like, man, I keep having a dream about that brooch. And then they're talking about it and they're like, oh, it was her mom's. And they're like, oh my God, that must mean that like the seventh witch is dead because Arnya is dead at this point. They're like, what do we do? And I just don't know why no one thought like, couldn't her mom have gotten it from her grandma? Like, what? Why did they not just like
No, that's
just
never
take
happened.
that next little step? Instead, they're like, oh no, the seventh witch is dead. What do we do? And they're like, I don't know. I guess we just keep having her look anyway. And
We should just hang out.
yeah.
Let's fucking vibe.
So then they send her on this quest to talk to what, like three other witches, because they go to Buzz Bay.
Ugh.
Because no one fucking calls Buzzards Bay that, first of all. You know, they see like a quote unquote powwow woman, which is I guess sort of a Christian tinged folk magic person, sort of in like the Ozarks or something, and they see somebody else in a cabin in rural Pennsylvania. I might be getting this mixed up. There's like one in Missouri and one in Pennsylvania or Ohio or something. Again, I'm like, Stella being the seventh witch really makes this whole thing unravel for me, you know, well, in yet another way, I guess. And I don't understand. Why wasn't Stella drawn to the spoon in the basement then? Is it like a 1-to-1 spoon to person ratio? Like, no, that basement spoon was definitely Lucky's. Like, why wasn't it Stella? Stella's the one who knew about the tunnel downstairs. Why didn't she feel anything about the spoon?
It doesn't make any sense. The other thing about Stella is that, and this is just like a personal opinion, I feel like, but Stella is presented as someone that has issues with forgetfulness, possibly some early onset dementia,
right.
And she's treated as kind of like the liability, like the one that you got to be careful about. But the whole time, Stella's honestly just trying to vibe out here. Like, Lucky just drags her along on this road trip. And the whole time, Stella is like, where's the pool at the hotels that they're staying at? Like, I want to watch some TV. I'm going to go get a popsicle.
I want a popsicle.
And
yeah.
if you, as an outsider, right? If you're observing this duo here, Lucky and Stella's just trying to have a good time on this road trip that her granddaughter is like, all right, Grandma, come on, we got to go find a magic spoon because the lady from the coffee shop came to me and told me that I only have 9 days to find it to stop all the oppressive things that keep everyone down here. And if we don't find it, then everything is going to be the same. Come on, Grandma, let's hop in the car. We got to go to New Orleans now.
Which, by the way, comforting message for a loved one with dementia. Just gonna hope that they grok all of that shit you just said.
It seems like Stella's the one that's chill and relaxed, and Lucky should perhaps get screened for some mental problems. It's just what I'm gonna say here.
Yeah, from the perspective of any outside character looking in on this situation who's not privy to all the magical nonsense, it is very much reversed kind of roles here.
So to me, that, like, just the fact that even Lucky trying to explain this to anyone, if it seems as incoherent as the plot actually is, because that's what it is. -1 for this category.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I have to say about characters is in, you know, sort of character quality and coherence is, I don't know, this is maybe less about character quality and more about the construction, but I don't know why we needed a chapter about every single person's spoon backstory, I guess, except Wendy, fuck her. I don't know. Did they really skip Wendy, or did I forget the Wendy chapter?
I don't remember any Wendy story either. No.
Yeah. So I don't know. Wendy's married to Mina, so I guess, I don't know, they're a package deal or whatever. But it just felt so. It just felt like padding, like fluff. I mean, you could have given us flashbacks at appropriate times, like quicker flashbacks, right? Like, I really only need a paragraph or two of really tight writing to understand a little something about their character. I don't know that I need 20 or 30 pages for people who are ostensibly just a backdrop for your main character, right? Because we get into all the, like, this detail about, like, Letty coming from an abusive baby daddy situation, and then Morticia being, like, working at an antique store in New York City, and, you know, all of them, whatever, each of their backstories, and, like, Mina being the son of, Mina being the daughter of a pastor, and she's a lesbian, so it was a big deal or whatever, but, like, sort of like what we were talking about, Ken, like what you brought up with Freya earlier, how Freya's just sort of like a lamp that says transgender woman on it. All the characters sort of have that going on. Like, none of their attributes or who they are have any particular bearing on the story. They could have been replaced with anyone, or they could have just not been there. And the
so
whole
it's equal opportunity, shallow characterization.
Yeah, so again, I was glad at the attempt to include a lot of differing folks in here, but it didn't make a lot of sense. I mean, my guess is that this is the dreaded first book in a series, and so maybe all the other characters will have their own spin-offs, you know, which I don't recommend, but maybe that's what's happening here. Maybe that's why we got these chapters. It's I don't know. It's a little too much. Again, I think this could have been accomplished.
Could be a Discworld situation where the first book sucks, but the rest of the series goes on to be amazing somehow. So, like, maybe?
Yeah, sure. All right. Let's move on to prose and dialogue. So the prose in this wasn't terrible. There are actually some really great moments, but they're almost always overshadowed by 2 or 3 additional phrases and descriptions that just bury the first good one. And it just feels like the author really needs to tighten up the writing. I know I used that moments ago to describe the writing, but that's just the best thing I can think to say. Let me just read a couple of examples of some good writing here. All right, this is just a small passage about the neighborhood in Toronto where Lucky has grown up her whole life and lives now. A single block housed 4 different cell phone repair stores. Sales posters were more often misspelled than not. The nail salons were suggestively named things like Finger Bang or Just the Tip. Lucky's neighborhood was a place people moved on from rather than into. A spot reserved for the very old and the very young, or the renters who couldn't fork out a security deposit for a West End studio with underground parking. The moon watched Lucky cut a small figure down the gray sidewalk, giving her a half wink from between the streetcar wires and eternity. Eyes on her Converse and the pavement, she missed the moon, and she missed the tall woman in a salmon-pink tulle gown skipping into an alley ahead of her. When Lucky crossed the street to avoid 2 drunks fighting, she also missed the 2 foxes carrying a netted bag of oranges between them. She didn't see a half-dozen bats careening from an open apartment window, looping calligraphy onto the dark sky, then chasing one another into the parquet. Focused inward and down, she missed all the magic and chance. So I thought that was a good, that's an example of some of the good writing in this that is possible. Let me see. I'll read another good one. Here we go. Jay opened the door, and the bells hanging from the spring stayed silent. He wrinkled his nose at the smell of mold, the warp of the wood. He preferred new buildings, and for all things to have exact angles. Too many years in the melt and creak of old Europe had given him very specific preferences. This entire store was upsetting to him at a cellular level. There was a wide man in the far corner with his back to him, wearing a puffy set of headphones, humming under his breath while he restocked the magazine rack. Jay inhaled long and thoughtfully. This wasn't him. The boy he was looking for was an illustrated man, tattooed across his hands. Jay had gotten that much from his Instagram page, which was either passionate expression or poor judgment. Either way, Jay would find an angle. He liked exact angles. They made sense. This was a description of horny Jesus H. Christos, who's, walking into the video store to find Malcolm, the infamous jerk-off best friend. But anyway, I thought it was really good characterization of the character. You get to know him a little bit in just a couple sentences, and I thought the description was good. So those are a couple examples of the quality of the writing, which overall I thought was pretty solid. It was fine, right? Like, I was never, if we're talking about dialogue, like, I was never embarrassed to be reading this, right? I wasn't like hiding it from public view, as so many books are.
I would say, like, that makes it that much more of a shame.
It does,
in some ways, that the plot is such a fucking mess, because there are absolutely these very nice moments of turns of phrase or just great descriptions that I think show that the author does have talent, does have skill, and comes back to what you said at the top, that, like, we're not here to say don't ever read this author, because perhaps there are some more well done work or works out there that they've done. But it's not this one.
Yeah. So I'll read some things that I thought were kind of weird in the text. I'm going to do, 24. Okay, this is a good example of overdone descriptions. It's almost like the author should have just chosen one and left, like, all three in, right? Or something like that. Didn't know where to stop with the description. So in this scene, Lucky and Malcolm are at the video store that Malcolm works at. And, I don't know, they're just talking. I know, she sighed, looking out the front window. The words, "You should be in the movies," stenciled across the surface, old-fashioned style. Life is just a non-stop music festival. Great, now it's raining. Hate April. They both paused, listening to the rain hit the street. They watched the night open up like theater curtains, with all the hushed anticipation of an old couple at the ballet. Water slid slowly down the glass like liquid-filled spiders spinning languid webs in the semi-darkness. From somewhere close by came the sound of a siren, and across the street an early raccoon knocked over a row of empty trash cans, chattering his disappointment at the garbage collector's efficiency. So, I thought the descriptions were kind of labored and weird, like liquid-filled spiders spinning languid webs, like the old couple at a theater watching the night unfold. It just didn't make sense. Like, you just get two 20-somethings in a movie store. It just, I don't know. To me, it was like, why are we beating the scene to death with these descriptors? And you know me, I love a good descriptor, but this just felt needlessly overwrought and kind of, I don't know, kind of cheesy, honestly.
I go with cheesy. This is like, I think this is like doubling down on my impression that it feels like it's being too cute.
Right. There's another part that was upsetting. This is when Mina Good and the rest of Wendy, her wife, and like Letty and the other witches, before they meet Lucky and Stella and all that, they're talking about, it's time for the spooning or whatever. Wendy reached for her wife's hands. "Listen to me. If there was ever a witch in the entirety of this doomed humanity who could pull this off, it would be you. You, Mina Amari Good, descendant of West Indian sorceresses, and the witches of the Puritans failed to burn. You got this, and I got you. I'll make sure Freya is prepared." Now, the Puritans didn't burn witches in New England. Can we just get that
so
straight?
Sick of that rallying cry. We are the witches they couldn't burn. That is the most
so
basic
cringe.
White Wiccan nonsense, and I am so sick of it.
Cringe.
I'm so over it, and I'm so done with it.
It's extremely cringe.
And thank you for articulating the thing about this whole book. That's the vibe of the whole thing, and that is why I had so much hatred for this book. And it just feels like that the whole time.
Yeah, part of me is like, well, if this is an Indigenous author cashing in on stupid white witch ladies, should I be as mad about it? And it did make me a little less mad. When I thought about it.
That would be very funny and very smart. Holy shit. Hang on. I'm coming around here. Hang on.
Right. Yeah. So I was like kind of making a little turn there when I was like, well, if this is just a clever way to cash in on the bullshit, and you're a marginalized person, like, just motherfucker, maybe do it. Maybe it's fine. I don't know. I mean, I hate it, but who cares what I think? Like, if you're getting a nice payday, maybe it's fine. I don't know.
I would agree. If there was an interview where the author was just like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm vibing like Stella over here. Where's the pool?
Yeah.
You got a popsicle?
Dude, okay, and that's what I agree. If there was an interview somewhere where she's like, hell yeah, fuck this shit, I would be like, yes, this is great, fine. Like, if you admit to the grift,
shit, I'm out.
Yeah, like if you admit to the grift, I'm with you there. Like, do it up. But I get the sense that that's not what happened. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but if that's the case, then I'm less angry about it. But in talking about sort of the writing, the prose and stuff, we've brought this up a few times, but I really didn't like that the author didn't trust the audience to figure anything out. So we've got VenCo Coven on the cover. Like the first chapter is like, it's VenCo. They're a coven of witches, and they take all the money, and they have affairs with their manservants, and they make the women's world turn, or whatever. I don't know. It's just, don't leave a little mystery. Don't tell us everything up front so easily. Don't give everything to the reader. There are a few examples of this in the text. So there's this thing with like yellow birds, and the author just so laboriously and heavy-handedly is like, and then a yellow bird flew by. Oh boy, that bird sure was yellow. It sure did sit there on the fence and watch, Lucky walk by. And it just happens so many times. And then at some point randomly, one of the other witches is like, oh yeah, yellow birds are witch birds. And you're like, why? What does this mean? Why are they witch birds?
There's reasons.
And so it's silly because it just comes out in the text and tells you, like, by the way, the yellow bird is a symbol of witches. It doesn't explain why, but I just want it to be more artful, right? Like, why couldn't she just notice yellow bird patterns on, like, a plate, or someone has a cardigan on with yellow birds, or, like, maybe a yellow bird flies by once or twice, but it's not so obvious. It's not so like a bird flew by and it was yellow. It just takes me out of the element, like takes me out of the fantastical story when I'm sitting here going, okay, the author doesn't even trust me to notice like a fucking bird or like a pattern. That sucks, I want the author to let me figure things out. This happens with other things in the book as well. There's a point where Chris was joking about it earlier, but they go to meet up with one of these other witch women or whatever in her cabin in the woods somewhere. I forget if it's rural Pennsylvania or Ohio or Missouri or something. And she's not there, and Jay Christos is there tricking them, saying, oh, I'm her nephew or whatever. And he gets Stella to sneeze in front of him, which I guess through magic rules means that he can now see through her eyes. So we're very clearly told that from that point on, horny Jesus can see through Stella's eyes, and so, Lucky needs to keep things from Stella. And just a few pages later, or maybe a chapter or two later, not very far along in the book, Lucky comes home exhausted and leaves her phone out, and Stella is looking through her phone and reads all these text messages, and you're like, oh fuck, now Jay knows everything. And then a couple paragraphs later, they're like, and Jay could see everything through Stella's eyes. It's like, gee, fucking, we know. You don't need to lay everything out so obviously for us. My God. It was just so infantilizing and frustrating as a reader to not have any mystery in anything.
What if I'm stupid?
The one mystery of like, oh, who... And then the one mystery of like, oh, who's the seventh witch, though? It just gets pulled out of the author's ass at the last minute, and there were no clues to lead up to it. So there's no satisfying mystery or thing to figure out in this book. It's all either given to you or pulled out of thin air, which is not the way to do it. You gotta leave some clues. You gotta let people see things, put it together on their own, maybe even leave the opportunity for multiple interpretations of something in a book, right? Like, that's cool and fun and good. Why we no do that? Why?
Harris, I think as a smart person, you're forgetting about the stupids like me, and as Dee mentioned themselves as well. So, just for a second, think about us dummies. We really, it helps when you say yellow bird magic, magic yellow bird, magic, magic yellow bird. So I can go, oh, okay, the yellow bird is magic. I get it. Thanks.
But what did that matter? Why were the birds there? They don't do anything.
Pretty bird.
This is an audio medium. You can't see me punching the computer camera because I am upset. No, Chris, you two are not stupid, and most readers are not, not stupid either. I don't think you need to hold readers' hands this much. It's just unfortunate. Like you said, it was a little heartbreaking because there seems to be so much promise here, and then it's just, You know what this reminded me of? This reminded me of Ninth House.
Oh, Ninth House is way better.
It was
so much
it
better.
was a lot better, but similar things where it's like someone did the witchy stuff. That's true. Ninth House is much better. They did a witchy theme. It was pretty good and written pretty well. Things were interesting. It was just the very, very end where that thing nosedived a little bit. But that, I would say, that was definitely a better version of what's going on here. Although it doesn't have the intersection or the attempt at intersectionality or indigeneity, and it does have a romance plot, which I hate. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of that, where I'm like, ooh, there's a lot of potential here. Could have gotten somewhere, but fell short in a lot of different ways.
So for this category, Paris, we want to give some grace and credit here, and perhaps a 0 instead of a -1.
Yeah, I think so.
Because there's good moments,
yeah, for sure.
And it does make me want to read some of the author's other stuff to see if a more coherent plot serves them a lot better.
I mean, I have read TikTok by Cherie Dimaline in the, Never Whistle at Night compilation. Again, the writing was good, but I didn't really like the story, although it was it had nothing to do with witches or anything. It was about guy who loses his father, goes on a hunting trip, gets bitten by a tick, and horror ensues. Just to, not ruin it for anyone who would read the collection themselves. I don't know. It was fine. I just remember thinking this is fine, and then going, wait a minute. Why do I know that author name? And then I was like, oh, this person's on the schedule this year for TBC. How weird. And I was like, I remember thinking well, how bad could it be? It's just
here we are.
Yeah, it's rough times.
Okay, so we're going to give a 0 on that category, and we're going to move into Terriblo's presence. And we turn to the antiques freaks for this one. You've been sitting here awash in all the bits and pieces that make up this book experience. Having not read yourselves, I do still feel as if sitting here and taking it all in, I would like for you two to be the barometer insofar as how much do you feel the presence of our wonderful Dark Lord in what you've seen and heard here?
I feel like the tips...
On a scale of 1 to haunted vagina, I'd give it about a 5.
I feel the tips of his claws on my shoulders. I don't know.
So
does that have
he's
to be
sort of an
numeric?
ambient presence. Sort of an ambient presence.
Yeah. This is definitely part of Terriblo's greater plan, but I don't know that he's directly interceding.
Yeah. I don't think he's penned his dark process through it, but he is over my shoulder going yeah about it.
Okay. All right. It's a 0, right? That's a 0.
I'd think he's a cackler. I would put him down as a cackler.
Yeah, for sure.
So in that case, I feel like you guys can score us here. So the way the rubric works is that it's a, sort of 3-tier system of -1 if you feel as if Terriblo was very present here, 0 if it was mildly present, and 1 if everything was all well and good and he was out on vacation for this one. So where do you guys
I think he's a 0.
Okay.
All right. Just a whiff of Terriblo.
A whiff of
A
Terriblo.
hint.
All right. We'll take it. All right. Which means that we can move into the final category of should this exist? And we kind of divide this up into a lot of different little sub questions to kind of help us get to the core of this, which are, would readers of this genre enjoy this? And I guess if you're into this stuff, if you are the White Witch Wine Mom,
Yeah.
you're probably really
Oh,
into
yeah.
this,
Eat
right?
this
Like,
up.
if
This
the
is your
grift is
book of the
real,
year.
Yeah.
This is your Goodreads Choice Award
Right?
number 1.
I do feel like this is definitely one of those, if you're a person who's like, I want a book about witches, like, you're into this shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
110%.
okay. Second question, does it feel as if the author's goal was met?
No.
Again, if that goal
No.
is taking money from the white wine witch moms, then yes. If that was the goal, achieved. But I don't know if that was really
Okay.
the goal.
Yeah. So if grift is the goal, then yes, but if it's writing a good book
Ooh.
about
No.
witches, probably
Yeah.
not.
If the
right,
goal is
right. So-
catharsis, I feel like that can only be determined by the author themselves, you know?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And then catharsis
It's
is
a-
the
it's a
third
tricky
option.
question.
Yeah, so catharsis unknown. Actually, we don't know. So, yeah, I don't know. Not sure. Unclear.
Does it add anything new, interesting, or novel into this area of literature?
No. Nah.
I don't.
Even
I don't
the
think it did a good enough job.
It was just like Power Rangers. It's just Power Rangers for wine moms.
Well, but Power Rangers has like really great practical costumes and effects, and this didn't have that. So I don't even know if we've reached a Power Ranger on the.
The Netflix adaptation might have really good
Wait a
practical effects. We don't know yet.
I doubt it. It's going to
True,
be digital
but-
if it's anything, Ken. We know that. No, this is going to be a
Hey, guys,
Hulu
what's-
series. It's
what's-
going to be a Hulu series. I'm calling it.
I gotta ask, since we're talking about it as if it's Power Rangers, what's like the, the dinosaur call out that they're doing when they're morphing, right? Is it like wine, herbs, Wicca?
Knitting.
Like they all
Oh,
morph
no,
into
no,
like,
it's
like what
sucking
else?
stones, man.
Spoons!
It's tourmaline.
No, it's just spoons. It's just spoons. It's spoon,
They all have
spoon, spoon.
Just yell spoons 7 times.
Knife.
And then there's
Ladle.
witches.
I don't know. And like, as much as I hate it, I'm still left at the end of this going, but if the indigenous author just served them back their vomit on a silver platter and said, eat up, bitches, and is now making bank off of it, I don't know. I don't know how to feel. Like, I don't like the book, but I'm like, maybe it's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine.
it's like, but it's not good. Like, here's like if they're grifting,
No.
then like I 100% as a part-time woman who does love crime, I 100% grift away. But it's not going to make the book good.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I want feminist, anti-capitalist, anti-racist, anti-patriarchal fiction, but this was not it. This did not scratch the old itch.
Yeah, not quite the ticket.
All right. Finally, did it take something from us?
Yes.
No, I don't think so. I feel okay.
Nah, it didn't
Will
really take
to
anything
live.
from me. Okay, all right.
I feel like it disrespected my time in a way, but that's about it.
Yeah, all right.
So, as far as should this exist, I want to give it a -1.
I'd give it a 0 just for the slim possibility that maybe this is a grand scheme that we're not seeing all of.
I feel like this is a really solid first draft.
Yeah, for sure.
I would accept that.
Yeah.
It feels
I would accept
like
that.
the fantasy novel that everyone writes in high school.
Yeah, it's just that, but if you're 35, right? It's like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Based on rubric scoring, we gave it 1 point for the first category, -1 for the next one, and then 0 for the remaining 3. So we're at a solid 0 out of
All
5.
right.
That's actually
Did you
quite
factor
a
in the
good.
10 points for chapter titles?
Oh, right.
Oh,
That's true.
Well, on the scale, it goes from -5 to 5. So a 0 is actually kind of all right. It's kind of not that bad.
Okay, Paris, can we fix it?
I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's really just going into the plot construction factory and like finding that the machines are spitting out any material at all with no plan on how to connect everything. Like, I need a lot more explanation of why there's a time limit on the coven thing, why it's down to 7 random witches to fix grand societal issues, how a coven of witches even does that. That I really need a lot more of that.
I mean, Chris, the book doesn't even know how a coven of witches does that, so I don't even know if it can tell you.
Exactly. Right, so like the comment that Dee made about it feeling like a first draft, I think is spot on. So you need to work on that area of things quite a bit more, and perhaps that will fix it.
Have you heard of the concept of frogging?
What?
Huh?
Have you heard of frogging? Anyone here heard of frogging?
Wait, is that when? Wait, you mean?
No, I heard
the one
I
where
heard
you
pegging the first time. So
wait, Ken, are you referring to the thing where you
Audio.
sneak into people's homes and live into their closets?
As a frog? No. No, frogging in, like, knitting and crocheting communities is when you have a project that's not done and you basically disassemble it to reuse the yarn for something else.
I see.
I've never
I
heard
think
that
the
before.
only way to fix this book is to frog it.
Yeah.
I think you gotta just disassemble the whole thing and use the pieces for something else. Maybe there's a character here, maybe there's a plot thread here, maybe there's some core concept that could be good in a different story.
Yeah, I feel like this, like Chris said, this could be fixed, but it needs a lot of work on the why, how of some really core plot elements. You know, like I already said, we don't need a full chapter on every person and how they got their spoon. You can have shorter flashbacks that give us the same context and, you know, and character depth without so much fluff. There's no need to have a romance with Malcolm. Horny Jesus could have gotten info about Lucky from anyone else, and we certainly didn't need the jerk-off scene. Don't completely undermine your whole story by having the 3 big bad witches kill the evil villain randomly in the last scene, because then it just seems like they could have done that this whole time, and their fretting about him being dangerous seems performative and stupid. If you could just roll up on your big bad enemy who will shackle the world's femmes in chains forever with a lighter and gasoline and crisp that motherfucker, then do it ASAP! Why are we waiting? You know, this story, honestly, would have just been better without him. I would have been way more interested in a story about these women coming together over some magical objects and being like, what the fuck is up with this? And then, like, learning their abilities and the backstory of the magic, you know, and all that. Plenty of real things that don't involve sex could keep them from the spoons, right? We don't need a horny Jesus. Like, maybe the spoons are, I don't know, in the ocean, on a ship, in a museum, in someone's attic, whatever. I also just would have wanted the connecting magical objects to serve a purpose and to feel more serious, right? Not a decorative spoon. Like, I would want things that made sense, like a dagger or a book of spells. Like, dude, I don't know, maybe like I don't know, anything. I'm trying to think of other things that are useful. A laptop, like a router, like, I don't know. Anything that is a decorative spoon that is as big as my pinky and not even really suitable to spoon with, right? It just gave a level of silliness to this.
I even would go a step further and say, I don't know why the items have to all be the same thing.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I wanted them each to have a different useful object, because then by combining all the different objects, it would help them serve their end goal, right? Whether it was like a dagger, a book, and, I don't know, a laptop. A laptop is being me joking, but I don't know. Things that aided their journey, not decorative spoons. Please, the spoons. Yeah, I don't know. There's also no explanation of how they're going to topple the white supremacist patriarchy. I mean, I get that this book is like, oh, this is the start of the thing, probably because it's the dreaded first book in a series or something. But, I mean, at least hint at the next step in the plan? And then on a writing note, you know, I just think the descriptions need to be tightened up. They can be great, but they also tend to choke themselves with an overabundance of description. Lastly, please trust your readers. Don't write things out so plainly. There is a lot of fun and a little mystery and a little work on the part of the reader. So those are all my main lines for, like, how to make this better. I don't know, Dee, Ken, Chris, got anything else to say before we go into the closing?
I'm glad it's over. I'm glad that we assembled the coven and that we got the circle together.
Yeah, what are our objects?
Are we gonna talk about driving from Salem to New Bedford?
Now is your moment, Ken.
That is how we got
It is
here,
time.
isn't it?
How
That
is it
how we got
described
here.
in the book? Remind me again. How is this lackadaisical scenic
Please
drive
hold.
from Salem
Please
to
hold.
New Bedford described in the text?
Oh, please hold. Let me get to the Buzzards Bay chapter. Yeah, so as I sort of mentioned in passing earlier, me and Dee grew up in and around Buzzards Bay, and Ken moved to the area later in life. So we're all intimately familiar with both Buzzards Bay and driving to and from said location. So they're in Salem, and they need to go to Buzzards Bay to talk to a tender there who is like a sort of strategist, knowledge keeper woman, right? The chapter opens with, Buzzards Bay wasn't far. My note reads, it's 2 hours on a good day, 3 to 4 with traffic.
Yes, the fuck it is.
I think this is just people who aren't from the Northeast. Like, my husband's from Minnesota, and he also doesn't think, like, a 4-hour drive is far. But here on the East Coast, we're like, that's fucking far.
It's not that it's far. I love a 2 to 4 hour lackadaisical countryside drive.
Right, like an
That's
actual
fine.
drive.
When the
Right, a
4
drive.
hours are because I'm stuck under an overpass surrounded by skyscrapers in the dead center of Boston for 3 hours, that's no longer a short 4 hours. That is a 4 hours where the time dilates, and I am stuck there for the full heat death of the universe.
Yes, exactly. There is something about the drive between Boston and the South Shore, or the North Shore and the South Shore, as this drive is, because Salem's in the North Shore. So, I mean, that's and like Salem. I was going to say Salem isn't even
Dead
on
center
the
of
highway.
the entire city of Boston is directly between Buzzards Bay and Salem. There is
Right.
no way to get to it without going through it unless you go fully into fucking Worcester and Western Mass to get around Boston.
It's true.
Or
True.
if you take to the sea and sail around the far side of Cape Cod. Because again, if you go straight down through Cape Cod and try to take the Cape Cod Canal, you will get stuck in traffic again, except this time you'll be on a boat.
Yes. Ken is right. And Ken and the terrible antique books freaks know this drive intimately well, because not only did we grow up in the area and spend a lot of time in these places, we've met up in Salem numerous times, and Dee and Ken have had to drive from Buzzards Bay to Salem and back in the same day, and it was miserable for them, and I am indebted to them that they think our friendship so worthy of travel.
It was worth it for you guys, but like, God.
Yeah.
What's that Tumblr mean? It's rotten work. Yes to me. Yes, if it's you, I'll fucking do it, but Christ alive.
Although, the book does get characterization of Buzzards Bay pretty great. It says, nothing but old fishermen and young Republicans in these parts. And I was like, oh, that hurt.
Well, thank you, Ken and Dee, for suffering through what we're up to here on this podcast and driving through Boston and back to meet up with us in person sometimes. We appreciate your efforts greatly.
Indebted.
Meanwhile, it's also time to thank our patrons and Ko-fi donors.
Yeah, thanks, Robin.
Well, thank you
Thanks,
to the Bad
Robin.
Book
You know what you did. Robin, I love you. Your recommendations are always
Yes.
fun, but you know what you were doing. I'm just kidding.
Thank you to the Bad Bookworms. Emily, Ben, Renee, Scott H., Donnie, Anya, Lycoris, Jakub, Jared, and Will. The exacting editors, Rudy Bogoody, the ugly one, Emmy, Harry, Seven, Funny Robot with Antennas, David, Martin S., Kieran D., and Greg. The loathsome librarians, Yanka, of the Void, the Taco-eating unicorn. Robin, extra thanks for today's recommendation. Austin, Patricia, Beast with the Least, Veronica, Luchek, Sinya, and Arant. The pesky publishers, Julius the Nice Dragon, and Miles May. And our Ko-fi donors, our ever-faithful Kiwi Thing, and Martin F. and Brenna, who helped relieve us of some terrible books. If you want some terrible books we've read for the show, you can buy them over at our Ko-fi page. The physical books, that is. A lot of books we read digitally, we don't have copies of those, but just go check out the Ko-fi page for what's available. Will anyone accept the challenge to become an arch-archivist this year? What heinous, monstrous tome will you force us to read? Okay, well, I'm off to, I guess, I don't know, do some witch shit. I don't even have a good sign off on this, man. I'm still sick as hell.
I just want to have a gin cocktail and play Elden Ring. That's all I want to do right now.
That sounds so fucking tight.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm alone for 6 weeks, guys. This is all I do.
All right. Well, thank you again to Ken and Dee for joining us on this one. We will sure to be returning the favor somehow in some fashion.
Will you read the terror with me?
Oh no, boy. Oh boy.
I guess I have to.
Ooh, should we watch?
Should
we watch the terror? Should we just read the terror?
We should definitely watch it because it's genuinely a good show, and we should also read it because it's genuinely a very bad novel.
Oh.
I can't wait for you guys to get to the chapter about pubic hair.
We already did that.
Platypus Pond.
We just did that in Wicked. I don't want to go back to pubic hair. We just escaped from the purple pubes of the Wicked Witch of the West in Wicked. Oh, man. Again?
Always pubes.
Always pubes.
Coming back. All right.
It's pubes all the way down.
Bye, everybody.
It's all the way down to Buzzards Bay. It's pubes all the way down. Good night! Thank you for listening to another episode of Terrible Book Club. Terrible Book Club is an independent podcast produced by your hosts, Paris and Chris. Sound design and audio editing by Chris, with sound effects and music by Epidemic Sound and sometimes also Chris. Our theme song is Kiss by Yearn, which is, you guessed it, actually also Chris. You can find more of his soothing synthy sounds on Bandcamp at yearn.bandcamp.com. Do you want us to review a book of your choice on the show? Do you want access to some extra audiovisual weirdness? If so, become a patron at patreon.com/terriblebookclub. If you'd like to send us a one-time tip instead, you can do that at ko-fi.com/terriblebookclub. You can also support TBC for free by sharing the show on social media, following our accounts on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or Goodreads, telling your friends about your favorite episode, or by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or anywhere else on the internet. To send us book recommendations or your adorable pet photos, send an email to terriblebookclub@gmail.com. This is for Chris to edit out later.
Quick, everyone say something funny and consequential that
Fart!
reference repeatedly throughout the rest of the recording.
What?
No,
Fart?
don't do that.
All right,
D's on the case, I see.
I've found my place. Shut up, you farters. Chris, you're so upset.